Death Stranding is a Hideo Kojima game, and because of that, you already know going in that you're going to be given an otherworldly experience, an experience that's going to have twists and turns throughout the entire game. Now, there's definitely more than 5, I would say, throughout this entire game. Pretty much every character even has their own twists as the game goes. I'm going to go over 5 twists, looking back at a game 5.5 years old, right, getting ready for Death Stranding 2. Let's look at some of my biggest twists in Death Stranding. So number 1, I want to start with Mama/Lockney. Now, these are characters that are obviously very intertwined, and really Mama's entire arc, right? And this is very early on in the game, even right after Fragile. Her entire arc is just a series of twists, right? You know that her baby is a BT, and throughout her chapter and throughout her missions, you start to find out not only what happened to her, but what happened to the baby, and then you find out that it's not even her baby. You find out she has a twin sister. You find out technically at the end that Mama was never really even alive, right? The baby, the BT, was keeping her connection to the living world. So when she cuts that, or when Sam cuts it to get her to her sister, that's the last of her ties, not only the baby and going to the beach, but her ties as well. It gets added onto even more when you find out they're basically 2 halves of the same person, a theme that you're going to see in the future with another character, but they basically complete each other, right? You see Lockney, one of her eyes change, and she's able to communicate with Mama, and Mama even technically helps you out later on in the game from her side, how she occupies basically the beach now, and then Lockney occupies the living world. This is really where it gets going, because you're already fed confusing things in the first several hours. Fragile, there is mystery, but then they kind of explain literally what happens to her. This entire chapter is just twists on top of twists, and while it's maybe not the most groundbreaking of the entire game, it arguably and statistically might be the most twists in one chapter in the entire game. Okay, number 2, let's talk about the connection between Sam and Cliff. This is one that really is built up through the entire game, and there's another one on this list that we'll talk about with Sam in particular, but when it comes to Sam and Cliff, you know, the game does a lot with Cliff specifically, right? Firstly, it breaks him up into several different chapters, goes last name, goes first name, combines them. You know, you do the war kind of segments, and then obviously throughout the entire game, anytime Sam is being plugged into BB-28, right, or Lou, you see from a certain perspective, right, you're seeing these flashbacks. And I feel like the game is trying to mislead you in several directions, right? You don't know if those memories are Sam or BB's. You don't know if Cliff is good or bad. I mean, the game definitely makes him out to be bad through the war scenes, but not necessarily the flashbacks. There, he seems like a protective father. It's only, obviously, the very, very end of the game that you finally realize, even though it becomes more apparent, I think, as the game goes, that these two are related and that Cliff is Sam's dad. Now, this really, I think, jumps us directly into number 3 on my list, which is Sam's entire origin, right? These two things are pretty directly connected. Sam is an interesting character in this game because oftentimes, again, like with Fragile or Hartman or different things, they'll outright tell you kind of their backstories. Dead Man, right? They'll tell you kind of their background and why they're named it, you know, whatever the case might be. With Sam, and I think this is done like specifically the way that it is, he is left rather open throughout the entire game. In fact, he's not really given all that much character love, and I think that's because, you know, they're trying to break it up and trying to almost mislead you in a couple different ways. Not only do we realize that Sam and Cliff, you know, father and son, but we also realize that that BB that we see in all of those flashbacks is actually Sam, and there's a lot more even lore that goes behind it. Sam was the first successful BB experiment. Now, I don't want to call him the first original, you know, BB just in general. I believe there were 2 others before him, but he was the first one that successfully, you know, worked and started this program, right? On top of that, you know, again, we have to have more than one twist there. We find out that after Cliff is shot and killed, he drops Sam and kills him, right? So that's how the Sam connection to the beach starts, and that's what really loses Sam's BB status. Once that line is severed, he can no longer perform the functions of a BB, but, Bridget sees something still in him and is still going to raise him, and there's your connection. Now, Bridget is the mom of sorts in the living world, and then, of course, Amelie first finds Sam on the beach, dead as a baby, and brings him back. So you got the connection and really the starting point of both of those, and really twists on top of twists, and the final one is this is what kicks off this extinction and this stranding that we are seeing play out through the entire game. This is really what starts it. Sam is really what starts it. The number 4 twist is how they perform the act of rotating villains in this game. I actually think it's quite well done, and it might be a common thing, in a lot of games, especially when they're 30, 40, 50 hours, you might want to have more than one villain, right? I think what this game does so well, and again, the twist on top of the twist, is kind of rotate them out. Higgs, I think, right from the beginning, right? First, because again, connected even to Fragile, there's like that evil villain intent, and he really retains that. He comes and goes, but he retains that throughout the entire game. But then you have, again, that rotation where you don't really know who to trust as part of the team, right? Die Hardman is oftentimes like sketchy. You don't know if you want to trust him or not. But then, of course, you have somebody like Cliff, and we just talked about it, right? Kind of goes in and out, and you don't really know. He definitely is the villain of the military missions because he's directly attacking you, you're directly attacking him, so that definitely makes him out to be. But again, his spot is a little iffy, but that's that rotation. And then really the final villain that you realize coming back and forth, right? Higgs, of course, towards the end becomes a pretty substantial villain, even gets a 3-part boss fight on top of a BT battle even before then. But really the final villain is who we as players and Sam as a character knows of as Amelie, right? Now, technically, as we find out, there's that split of, her Ha and Ka, and I don't even know if you really want to call her Amelie, but it's just kind of easier to do it. And ultimately, you discover, depending on, I guess, how you look at villains in this game, she is the ultimate villain. She is the extinction entity, which is being built up throughout the entire game. But more than that is she's literally, the cause of the stranding that is going to wipe out civilization. I would therefore declare her to be, the ultimate villain. Obviously, villains in this game are not so black and white. They are pretty in-depth, and she's very in-depth. She's got reasons for why she's doing it. And ultimately, she calls off the last stranding anyway, so you have her kind of conclusion there as well. And coming in at number 5, I don't know if everybody would consider this a twist, but I want to talk about, I believe, the second to last mission in the game, which is traveling from west to east. So the entire game, you're going east to west, and you might assume, okay, we're maybe going to have to go backwards. In fact, as the game goes, oftentimes you almost retreat to like the main area or main center in the area to get more objectives and orders and continue on. But throughout the entire game, you're fed this narrative that even though Amelie will be waiting for you on the beach and all that jazz, that you'll find her at the final destination at the total end of the United States and the West Coast, and you will jump back. Now, when you reach the beach, there's still that belief. Fragile makes the jump back, and Sam even asks, like, well, are we going to do that like her? And then Amelie says, no, this beach goes on, so we can just walk the beach. After a whole lot of exposition and just knowledge and learning, we actually find out, no, you will not be jumping back. In fact, due to unforeseen circumstance, you will be walking back, or I guess you could use other means. And this walk or this travel is quite something. They provide you vehicles. Sometimes you'll be running into massive BTs, and then ultimately ends with the fight against the giant whale BT at the very end, right at the edge of that city. So, it's a 2-parter because the continent is basically broken up into 2 different zones. You'll definitely be getting your steps in because you'll just be going backwards through everything that you've already done. I actually kind of did a shortcut and just stuck very, very close to the beach, which ironically got me almost to the destination flawlessly without having to go through mountains and all sorts of random terrain. I kind of took a detour that ultimately I probably could have done the first time anyway. So let me know what you guys think of my list and what are your biggest twists in Death Stranding looking back at this game. Let me know. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel, bell icon turned on, and I hope to see you all on the next one.